Other examples that kind of, and you'll see some of my things overlap. Like a lot of things have great context and hopefully some innovation and maybe some user-generated context. So there are things I might show you more and more, but this is a project called Inside the Rings, which was kind of a brainchild between myself and a guy named Jeffrey Marcus, who's one of our senior sports producers. Really bright guy, understands the internet, understands how to deliver news on the internet. And so just take a look at it. The problem we were trying to solve is we have this like fire hose of information about the Olympics, right? And when people are at the Olympics, we have like probably literally dozens if not more stories a day coming out about all kinds of different things about that day in the Olympics. How do we help our readers navigate this fire hose of information so that they can understand the context of these stories? And this is kind of an idea.
Hello and welcome back to Inside the Rings. This is the final video update by the New York Times from the Beijing Olympics. And on the final day of these games, early this morning, we had the men's marathon. Believe it or not, a Kenyan has never won an Olympic gold in the marathon until today. Sammy Wanjiru enters the bird's nest all alone after 26 miles, and he wins comfortably. A few hours later, men's volleyball, indoor volleyball final, U.S. against Brazil. Remember, the coach of the U.S. men's team about 10 days ago, his father-in-law was murdered at a popular Beijing tourist spot. The coach was away from the team for a while, but he was there today.
Okay, so as you can see, like, you get the idea, I'm sure. What we came up with was, okay, well, why don't we have Jason Stallman, who's another one of our wonderful producers, kind of deliver what we think are the main news headlines of the day. And while we do that, we'll give you the link. Like, don't worry about it. And you can come back to it. You can do whatever. Listen to it. If at the time you're playing the video and you decide,
medal match,
oh, well, that sounds really interesting. What happened to that U.S. coach? You click on it. It pauses the video. It opens the page for you. You close it. You come right back to the video. You hit play again, and you're on rolling. So we're setting these things in context. We're saying, this is what we think is important, and here's the link to it. And if you want to click on it, sweet, like great, go check it out, read it. If you don't, fine, whatever. You know, it's just like any other link that passes you by 100 times a day. And while simply providing data, the internet's developed, and the news industry in the internet has developed a lot in the past couple years. When I was in college, when I was in grad school, one of my biggest issues with how journalists were approaching the internet at the time was that they would just dump a lot of information on it. Like, they thought it was good if look, here's a database, I'm going to put this database online, and that's journalism. Well, not really. Journalism is not only putting that database online, that's the first step, but then putting that database in some sort of context for people. Because believe it or not, most people don't look at databases. Most people don't look up things in a database and then automatically understand what that means, right? It takes the context of people putting it and saying, oh, this is all the data. Go ahead, drill as deep as you want. Look up anything you want for the store that's on your corner or that specific drug. But here's the big picture. Here's what that means for you. I get the absolute pleasure of working with Steve Duenas, Sean Carter, Matt Erickson, Archie Say, and what I consider is the best graphics team in the world. These guys are hands down incredible at taking large swaths of information and turning it into something that's put in context, digestible. You can understand not only why it's important, but how it affects the other things in it. They're really easily, I think, the best graphics team in the world. And so the next couple projects that I show, all were done in conjunction with them, and they really are pushing the boundaries on context and interactive databases and things like that. The first one is a project that hopefully a lot of you have seen. It's the second part of a project, Casualties of War. And nowadays, it's funny, because nowadays you've probably seen something like this, right? But we published this, I think the New Year's Eve 2006. So this was published in 2006, I'll say, even though basically 2007. And since I've seen this thing duplicated exactly by the BBC and a couple other organizations who have just basically taken this exact same idea, turned it on their country, and done the same thing. That's fine. But it was interesting that at the very beginning, Sean Carter, who worked on this project, we had this entire database, which was done by Andy Laren, who's a computer-assisted reporting, CAR, in case you guys come across that term, a CAR guy at the New York Times. And Andy's incredible, right? Every day, Andy contacts the Department of Defense. He gets the list of people who they're reporting is killed. He fact-checks their name. He makes sure that we know where they're from. He puts it in a database. He contacts the photo desk. We get a photo of the person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he maintains this really large database, right? But what do we do with this huge database? How do we make it so that people can really understand what it means that 7 more soldiers died today, and those 7 soldiers all came from a platoon based in Georgia, or those 7 soldiers all came from a platoon that's scattered throughout the United States, or they were all young men in their 20s or whatever. So you can come here, and what you can do is you can take this database of information. This has a database on its back end, and you can chop this data in all kinds of different ways. You can set the time span, and then you can drag this time span through, and by watching the map, you can see really where a lot of the conflicts took part. But that's really just one way to tell you this story, right? That helps you see where the fighting's going on. But if you look at these parts up here, the bar charts and everything, you can see what race of people are dying, how old are the people who are dying, what branch are they in, you know, what type of duty are they serving, and then we added this part. Look, you can see where are the people dying, like, or where are the people from who are dying in this war. So that's really wonderful, right? That's not only putting the data online, but it's also providing a little bit of context. But what I really love, and I think could be called out a little bit more or whatever, but often in the news industry, you put it out there and then you're on your next project, are these little parts at the top, which actually help tell a little bit of a story, right? You can set, what these do is set the time to time periods that you might remember in your head, right? Like the initial invasion. And you can see 148 people died in the initial invasion, which was between March 16th and May 10th. What about the first invasion of Fallujah, which I'm sure many of you remember too? Well, that was this little period of time right here between March 14th and May 8th. And this is where the fighting occurred. And this is the kind of people who died. And this is where they were from. And what about the second? And then since the troop buildup began, which was the surge at the time. So this is just a really, really incredible piece of work that not only provides data to the user, but helps that user put that in a little bit of context. Another one is a history of world records, which I could show you, but we'll skip it for now. This is a project that I just launched yesterday, along with Elizabeth Goodridge, who's our Washington producer at the New York Times, and based on the reporting of Rachel Swarns, Jody Cantor, and a genealogist, Megan, whose last name I can't pronounce, so I won't. But basically, I really encourage you to read the story. It's a really great story. But instead, I'll show you how we tried to handle it using the interactive. You come to the interactive. Obviously, you can see that here's 1 button, 2 button, but here's the button that smacks you in the face, right? Big blue play button, upper left-hand corner. That's where the eye is going to first. Most everybody is going to hit this play button first, and that's great because that's what we want them to do.